The following is a production of Stevenson Media. Want to tip the host? Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description. Get a free Houston Sports State of the Union podcast t-shirt with a donation of $50 or more.
This is the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the president of Houston Sports Nation, Nick Stevenson.
My goodness, thank you so much, and please be seated, my fellow Houstonians. Welcome to this Houston Sports State of the Union address for the week of March 30th. I am the self-appointed president of Houston Sports Nation, Nick Stevenson. As always, there are a million different things you could be doing today. You chose to spend a little bit of time with me, and I thank you. On today's show, the Houston Rockets are headed to the playoffs for the first time in 5 years, and they have clinched a top 4 seed in the West. They're trying to hang on to the number 2 seed so that they'll have home court advantage in the first round while having the toughest schedule remaining in the league. Also, there's a former Astro who's out there killing it, and there's another who's falling flat on his face, literally. We will talk about that, and we will talk about our Houston Astros. And the Texans are preparing for the draft after acquiring more depth from a former division rival. We'll get into that. Is this the golden age of Houston sports? I want to talk to you guys about it. I want to know what you think about it. We will discuss all of that and more on the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast. If you are watching live, I appreciate it. I would love for you to involve yourself in the conversation. If you're listening to this after the fact, I appreciate that as well. Let me remind you guys of the ways you can support the show. One, hopefully you're doing already. When you are doing already, you're listening, you're watching, you share with your friends and family. Remind them to follow, like, subscribe, wherever you get your podcast fixed. And that is the number one way you can support me. If you'd like to support financially, there is a QR code in the corner for a tip jar. If you are not able to scan that QR code, or you are watching or listening on, why do I have an echo? Give me just a second. If you're watching or listening to this after the fact, there are show notes where you can find the, you can find the link in the description for my tip jar. I'm just fixing some sound issues and multitasking at the moment. I appreciate you guys for being patient. But yeah, there's a link to the tip jar. Or if you want to leave me anything that you leave me goes directly back into this show and bringing you guys more content. And also there are affiliate links in that description or show notes for Houston Sports fan gear and all the equipment I use to bring you this fine podcast. If you're interested in podcasting and you want to know, hey, how does he do it? Well, everything I use is in the show notes. There are Amazon links, and if you purchase anything from those Amazon links, I will get a little bit of change from that. And I do appreciate it. All right, we've got our technical difficulties on the sound fixed. So let's get into the Houston Sports State of the Union. And we will start with the state of your Houston Rockets. Okay, last night the Rockets beat the number 1 team in the NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They did so handily, and they did so without one of their best defenders in Dillon Brooks. Now, the Rockets' last 5 games of the season, which last night was the start of their last 5 games, are against 5 of the top 7 teams in the Western Conference. You have last night they played the Thunder. Tomorrow night they will be playing the Warriors. Following that, they head to LA to take on the Lakers and the Clippers, and they will end their season a week from today versus the Denver Nuggets. That means that the Houston Rockets' destiny is in their own hands. And if they are diligent, and if they play the way that they played last night versus the best team in the NBA, then I do believe that they will end this season in the number 2 position. And I think them staying in the 2 seed is really crucial because they would end up playing whoever comes out of the play-in between the Grizzlies, Mavericks, Kings, possibly T-Wolves, Suns, or Clippers, all teams that I feel like they have more than a great chance to defeat in the first round. If they somehow slip to 3 or 4, then there's a chance that they have to have a first round matchup versus the Warriors, Lakers, or Denver. And those are teams that I think none of those teams really scare me. However, we know that the Warriors are the Rockets' kryptonite. They have been for several years now. And while they've had the upper hand on Denver this season, Nikola Jokic is playing on a MVP level, as he has been for several years now. So listen, I'm not scared of anybody, but if you're going into the playoffs, obviously you want to play the teams you feel like you have the best chance of defeating in the first round. And I think that if the Rockets are in the number 2 seed and they're facing a team like the Kings, Mavericks, even the T-Wolves, Clippers, I like their chances, especially with a home court advantage in a 7-game series. But the way the Rockets have been playing lately, I like their chances versus anybody. And I think it was really important for them to do what they did last night, to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder handily. Now, you can say, hey, Oklahoma City, they've got nothing to play for. They've already locked up the entire, the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. I believe they've locked up the best record in the entire league. I believe they will finish with a higher record than the Cleveland Cavaliers. So why on earth would they have anything to play for in that game? Well, first of all, pride. The Rockets and the Thunder have played a couple of really, really good close games this season. The Rockets got embarrassed in the NBA Cup, but the Rockets have also beaten the Thunder twice this season. So I think, and let me not downplay the fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder, not only are they the best team in the league this season, but they're one of the best teams in history. I believe they're still going to win just under 70 games. They have the largest point differential since, the Bucks in 1971, 72. Like they're a great team. And they're more than likely going to the Western Conference Finals, and they are the strong favorites for good reason to represent the Western Conference in the finals. But if anything, last night's game showed the Houston Rockets that when you play your style of basketball and you play your best, and I don't think the Thunder played bad yesterday, the Rockets just played better. When you play your game, when you defend, when you rebound, when you get out and transition and get fast break points, you can hang with the Thunder and you can beat them. And that's good to know. The only question mark I have is, can they beat the Warriors in a 7-game series? And if they're lucky, they won't even have to find out. So hang on to that number 2 seed and, get your first playoff series win since 2020 and come out of there feeling really confident that you can beat just about anybody in this league. But I would say there's no question, based on the way the Rockets have won 51 games now, they will probably, I think in the last 4 games, they'll probably split, I'll say. I would be happy if they split. If they win 3 out of 4, that'd be great. As long as they don't lose the next 4 games, that would be disastrous. But right now, they are 3 games up in the loss column on the Lakers. They're 4 games up in the loss column on the Nuggets and the Warriors. So they are in a really good position. If they handle their business, they will finish the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Now, what about the playoffs? In the playoffs, is the lack of experience going to catch up with them? The only reason I say no, optimistically, is because of the veteran leadership on this team, because of Fred VanVleet, who has won an NBA title, because of Dylan Brooks, who, the wild card that he is, he has playoff experience, because of guys on the bench like Jeff Green, who've seen everything. I think they have a good opportunity to make some noise in the playoffs. Am I picking them to go to the finals? Probably not. I could see them going to the Western Conference Finals, though, and playing a 7-game series with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I could see them giving the Oklahoma City Thunder a run for their money. But all of that is going to be dependent on them finishing out this season strong and maintaining that number 2 seed in the West, which, once again, it's all in their hands. They have a great opportunity to do so. So I would say that the state of the Houston Rockets is very strong. And if you guys are not on this team yet, if you haven't been watching them this season, you're missing out. Tune into the playoffs because I think they're going to be a really fun team to watch. All right, really quick, let's get into the state of your Houston Astros. The Houston Astros are actually playing right now, so some of you may be watching them instead of watching me. They are currently getting mollywopped 6-1, top of the 7th inning, by the Minnesota Twins. Offense has been a struggle for this Astros team. And if you've been following the Astros for a while, you know that's really not nothing new. That's kind of what they do at the beginning of the season, at least over the last couple of seasons. They struggle on offense. You expect them to get better, come out of their slumps, whatever, start hitting better. That's what they normally do. It just kind of stings a little bit when you look at the landscape of Major League Baseball and you see that former Astros, Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker, are currently knocking the cover off of the baseball. Kyle Tucker is hitting 300. He's got 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, and a 1.176 OPS. Alex Bregman is hitting 314 with 4 RBIs, 1 home run, and he's got a .837 OPS. Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker combined have 1 less home run than the entire Houston Astros lineup. That stings a little bit. I'm not saying that letting them go was a bad decision. I'm just saying early on, doesn't look great. We'll see who gets the last laugh at the end. Cam Smith, he's extremely young. Like, obviously the jury is out on him, and it's very early in the season. The Astros are currently 3-4, but they are losing to the 2-5 Minnesota Twins currently. And it's the 7th inning, so there's still a chance for him to pull something off. But once again, a slow start for our Astros, who, like I said, that's kind of been the MO for them over the last couple of seasons. All in all, though, it's way too early. I've said this a million times. There's a bazillion games in baseball. Baseball is the one sport I do not panic over. I have seen the Houston Astros go 15-30 and end up making the World Series. So let's hold off all judgment. I'm just saying early on, it doesn't look great when you have 2 guys who could have been in uniform for you. The Astros did not have to trade Kyle Tucker this season. They could have traded him in the middle of this season. They could have kept him, let him walk away and get some compensatory picks, whatever. But they did what they did. That's neither here nor there. But it just kind of stings that you see both of these guys actually playing pretty well for their new teams. Especially the fact that their new teams are the once hated Cubs, former division rivals, and the current hated Boston Red Sox. It stings a little bit. But all in all, I say the state of the Astros is still good. It's still strong. There's a lot of season to go. Even though they're currently, like I said, losing 6-1 and the top of the 7th. We'll see what happens in that. But all in all, I say the state of the Astros is strong. Let's move on briefly to the state of the Houston Texans. Okay. The Houston Texans are coming up on the draft, I believe April 21st. Is the draft? No, April 24th. April 24th will be the draft. And the Houston Texans have made some moves in free agency that kind of have people wondering, what are they going to do with that first round pick at number 25? And I think that's a good thing that the Texans don't have a glaring hole that everybody knows, including other teams know, hey, the Texans have to pick this position. I think anytime you pigeonhole yourself, there's a good chance that maybe another team makes a move to jump ahead of you and take your guy. And I think purposely the Houston Texans have kept it very ambiguous, at least in public, of what they're trying to do. But they have completely revamped the offensive line. They have veterans on the offensive line that they've brought in. Nobody's saying that they've made earth-shattering moves there. But I hate to say this, but I called this on the Twin Toros podcast that I thought that the Texans could and should take a look at Cam Robinson and Trent Brown. Well, they have signed both of those players to 1-year deals. You got Laken Tomlinson. You traded for Ed Ingram. These are bodies, and they're bodies who have been in the NFL. They're battle tested. Some of them, in the case of Trent Brown, I mean, at one point he was one of the best tackles in the league. So the Texans have thrown spaghetti at the wall when it comes to the offensive line, and I'm pretty sure they just are going to figure out what sticks. The question is, does that mean that they're not going to look at offensive line in the first round of the draft? Because another need that they have on this team is wide receiver, and there are more than likely going to be some really good wide receivers available at 21. Will there be really good? 25. Will there be really good tackles available at 25? That I don't know, and that's why I think that in the first round, the strategy I've thought they should have since the offseason began is the same. Go get an offensive tackle. I don't know if it's going to be Kelvin Banks Jr. I would like Kelvin Banks Jr. I don't know if it's going to be the kid out of Oregon. His name is escaping me. Not Oregon, out of Ohio State. Josh Smith, I think. Josh Collins. Why can't I remember his name? I forgot to put it in my notes, and I do apologize. I talked about him on the recent episode of the Twin Toros podcast, so you guys go check that out. Just for, if not for any other reason, to prove to you that I know this dude's name. You guys know how I am with names, and on this show, names will escape me all the time, and if I don't have them in my notes anywhere, then it is, in the words of NSYNC, gone. Okay, but yes, I think you draft an offensive tackle, maybe even an offensive guard, because I think there's going to be wide receivers available in the second round. And you got some draft capital from the Laramie Tunsil trade. So even if you have to move up into the second round, or maybe move up into the back end of the first round to grab the receiver you want, I think you can still do that. I think there's a chance in the second round you can get the likes of Tez Johnson. You could get the likes of, what's the other? You got Trez Johnson. I'm doing the names thing again. He's a wide receiver. You got Mbuka is going to be gone in the first. I think Matthew Golden is going to be gone in the first. But there are receivers that are probably going to slip down to the second round. Trey Smith. Trey Smith? See, this is what happens when you cut your notes in half because you're a little bit of behind the curtain. I have to meet my son's girlfriend and their family in about 20 minutes. Give it 30 minutes. It's senior prom tonight for Deer Park High School. We're going down to G-Town. And I cut my notes in half to try to get this show cranked out. Is that a good thing? Probably not. But I forgot to type in the names of these receivers that I've been talking about for 2 weeks. And they are escaping my mind right now. But it's okay. Because I would say overall, it doesn't matter. Because do what you got to do to get your offensive tackle. Preferably Kelvin Banks Jr., even if you have to move up. I think you go get that guy, you plug him in. Maybe he plays guard for a little while. Maybe he can play tackle immediately. But all of a sudden, if you get a healthy Trent Brown, you get a healthy Cam Robinson, you can keep Titus Howard at guard. Juice Scruggs played a pretty decent center in his rookie season, wasn't great last year. Maybe the change of offensive coordinator, the change of offensive line coach does just enough for you that all of a sudden what was a weakness becomes at least, if not a strength, it doesn't become a liability. If you get 50% better offensive line play than you got last season when you won 10 games and won a home game in the playoffs, then I think that's an improvement. And with CJ Stroud, and if you get yourself a good receiver to go with Nico Collins, to go with Christian Kirk, all of a sudden, man, you might be cooking with grease. We already know the defense is going to should be absolute beast mode. So I'm excited about what the Texans do in the draft. I think they should go offensive line. If they draft Matthew Golden, if they draft Ibuka, I mean, Isaiah Bond, you could probably get in the second round. There's a lot of good receivers, man. If they draft any of them in the first round, I'm not going to be mad. I just hope somewhere in the draft they address the offensive line, because obviously that was the biggest weakness on their team last season. And I've said over and over again, what impressed me so much about the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles is that they had a disappointing season 2 seasons ago. And in the offseason, they addressed everything that needed to be addressed immediately, fixed it, came back, went all the way to the Super Bowl, and won the whole damn thing. If the Texans can do that, then I think the city of Houston will be elated. Is this the golden age of Houston sports? You've got a Houston Rockets team finally back in the playoffs. The Astros, although once again they're struggling early this season, the Astros are by no means irrelevant. I think when it's all said and done by the end of the season, they should be leading the division. They should be in the playoffs. And once you make it to the playoffs, anything can happen there. The Astros are relevant, and they have been for over a decade. In fact, at one point, they were probably the best team in baseball for an extended period of time. And then the Houston Texans have found their way back into relevancy. And for the first time in a long time, are at least in the conversation of possibly being Super Bowl contenders. At what point in Houston history was it better than now? When the Rockets were winning championships, the Oilers were just about on their way out. The Oilers were good. They had some really disappointing playoff losses, but in the regular season, they were good. And the Astros were making it to the playoffs, but constantly losing in the first round. So, yeah, we had a championship team in the Rockets, but we had an overall good but disappointing teams when it came to the Oilers and the Astros. I think when the Astros won the World Series in 2017, the Rockets were a good team, but they were ultimately falling short in the playoffs, short of the expectation. And that's hard to say when the Rockets were coming up against probably the greatest basketball team ever formed in the Golden State Warriors at that time. But while the Astros were winning and going to the World Series, the Rockets were good for a little while. But they weren't winning championships at the same level. I would argue that the Rockets, Astros, Texans around 2017 was pretty strong, but there was always one who was just disappointing us. Right now, I can't say that either of our major teams are disappointing us. We'll see what happens with the Texans this season. It was disappointing that they didn't get to the divisional round once again, but considering the fact how terrible they were, 2 years ago, to have 2 10-win seasons, in a row after being absolute dog crap for a couple of years, it's difficult to say that they're disappointing us. We'll see what happens this season. I think if the Rockets get into the playoffs, especially if they're the number 2 seed, I think even if they lose their first round matchup, yes, that would be disappointing. I guess it depends on who it's against. If you lose in the first round to the Golden State Warriors, that'll suck. But I wouldn't say that the Rockets, you would feel like the Rockets let the city down. And then the Astros, if they win the division and win a playoff series, considering the fact that, they've made so many changes that they have made, and there were so many question marks going into the season, I would say that's successful. So there's a good chance that we are living among the best times in Houston sports with the best combination of our major sports teams. Throw in U of H, shout out to them. They'll be playing in the Final Four tonight. Throw in U of H, throw in the Dynamo. I wish I could say something about the Roughnecks, but they suck. I could do a whole episode on why the new iteration of the Roughnecks really pisses me off. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's a problem at all with saying we may be in the golden age of Houston sports. Let's see how the Rockets do in the playoffs. Let's see how the remainder of the Houston Astros season goes. And let's see what the Texans do after the draft. When it's all said and done, I think the answer to that question will be more clear by the end of the upcoming NFL season. Because by then, the baseball season will be over. We'll have seen what the Rockets do in their first playoff in 5 years. And we will find out if the Houston Texans are really making strides towards becoming Super Bowl contenders. Then we can answer the question, is this the golden age of Houston sports? But even without that question being answered, I would say that the state of the union in Houston sports is still very strong. Astros headed to the playoffs, one of the best teams in the NBA, best young teams in the NBA with an exciting future. The Houston Astros are still very much relevant, and the Houston Texans have a young core, a young head coach, and they seem to be headed in the right direction. So it's a great time, as I always state, to be a fan of a Houston sports team. Great time to do a Houston sports podcast. That's why I do this show. That's why I do the Twin Toros, and I want to encourage all of you to please continue to consume both of those shows. If you're not following ESPN Houston's YouTube channel, please go do that. Subscribe and make sure you hit your notifications. You can actually save our playlist, the Twin Toros playlist, on your favorites. That way you check out our show every week. Right now, we're doing a weekly show every Tuesday at 7:30 on ESPN Houston's YouTube channel. You can also please follow Ruben Calvillo at 713 Houston Sportscast. He does daily Houston sports content. He is my co-host for the Twin Toros podcast. And he also is doing a lot of work with the Athletically Declined group, who I think he does a wrestling show for them, and he does a Houston Texans show with my man Spencer. So look, man, it's a great time to be a sports fan in Houston, a great time to be a content creator in Houston. We're doing big things all across the board, and I thank everybody who's worked with me and helped me and ingratiated me into this space, including all of you who consume this podcast on a weekly basis. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Let me remind you one more time of the ways you can support this show. One of them you've been doing this entire time. You listen, you watch, please share with your friends and family. Remind them to follow, like, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, or on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram. I was doing X, but I do not want to pay $11 a month on X for 5 people to watch my show there. But ultimately, for those of you who do consume the show, whether you're doing it live or you do it after the fact, I appreciate you guys so much, and I thank you for all of your support. That is the number one way to support me, and you've been doing that. Also, once again, in the show notes, there is a list of Houston sports fan gear and a list of items that I use to bring you guys this fine podcast. There are Amazon links to both the fan gear and the podcast items. If you purchase those, that leaves me a little bit of change so I can continue bringing you guys good content. And there is also a link to a tip jar there. If you guys want to leave me a tip, I appreciate it very much. If you leave a tip of $50 or more, I will give you Houston Sports State of the Union podcast t-shirt, hat, hoodie, whatever you want, man. Let's get some swag out there. I appreciate anybody who joined today. Once again, I will see you guys next week on Friday, not on Saturday, on Friday. In the meantime, you know what I want you to do. I want you to stay 10 toes down for the H. I love you, and good night.
This has been the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast, hosted by Nick Stevenson. Tune in next week for more news and analysis of your favorite Houston teams. Please follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, the app, formerly known as Twitter, if that's even really still a thing. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.